because we live in a sin-cursed world, there will always be barriers to the church doing what we're called to do. There will always be difficulties. There will always be things we have to get beyond. And I can think of two barriers that we face in the world today. I'm going to tell you those two and what we ought to do about them. So one of the barriers is outside of us. It's in our neighbors. The other one is inside of us. The one that's in our neighbors is what I call a spiritual barrier. The spiritual barrier is, it's summed up in just saying, they're not interested in what we have to say. They don't want to know what we have to offer them. They've lost that hunger to know the truth. See, I talk to people who are my age and older who can testify that things used to be a little different in this country. Not perfect. We have a way of seeing the past through rose-colored glasses, but definitely the church was more influential. Christianity was more a part of culture than it is today, and certainly more people were coming to faith in those days. I'm talking from the mid-40s to at least the end of the 70s. And so people in that, when we're talking and they're my age or older, they'll say, what we need is another Billy Graham. Now, if you're not familiar with that name, or if you've heard the name but you don't know about him, let me just tell you just a little bit about this guy. Billy Graham was a preacher who preached during that time from the mid-40s, and actually he passed away in the 21st century. But he was a guy who could fill a stadium like Taylor Swift. I mean, a preacher who would stand in a stadium and it would be packed with people, and then they would play Just As I Am, and people would flood the aisles to come forward and give their heart to Jesus. This is a guy who would be invited onto national talk shows. See, what young people don't realize is it used to be that there was one late night talk show everybody watched. So if you stayed up past the news, you'd watch Johnny Carson, and he'd have a movie star on, and he'd have a famous musician, and then Billy Graham would show up once in a while, and he'd ask him questions, and Billy Graham would answer from the Bible. This is on a talk show that went out to the entire country. This guy was so famous, if you wanted to write him a letter, all you had to do was just address the envelope by saying, Billy Graham, Minneapolis, Minnesota. That's it. The post office knew where he was. They'd take it to him. He even got a letter once where a person got confused and wrote, Billy Graham, many apples, many sodas. And it got delivered. This is a guy who had a personal relationship with every president from Harry Truman to Barack Obama. That's how many presidents said, I need to get this guy's prayers. I need to get this guy's wisdom. I need to hear from him and him hear from me and have his support. And it wasn't just him. If you're familiar with groups like Campus Crusade, now called Cru, or Navigators, or Fellowship of Christian Athletes, all these ministries were started during that period of time. And I got news for you. I love Billy Graham. He's one of my heroes. But it's not that he was an exceptional preacher. If you just read the text of his sermons or even watch old video, you're like, okay, it's pretty basic stuff. The difference was he was the man for his time. This was a time, that period of our nation's history was a time in which there was a hunger for truth combined with a consensus idea that the Bible is true. I mean, even most unbelievers thought, well, I'm not a Christian, but yeah, the Bible's probably where the answers are. I may not understand it, I may not live it, but yeah, if I wanted to, that's where I'd find the answers. That was the basic consensus of our country. And someone like Graham or these other groups would stand up and say, you don't have to understand it all. You don't have to follow it perfectly. You just have to believe that Jesus did it for you, and you're in. And people were so excited to find that out. Today, if you share that same message in the same way Billy Graham and thousands of others did, there's a different response. It's as though back then they were farmers who had ground that had plentiful rain and fertile soil, and all of a sudden we've been through a drought. And it's so much harder to get a harvest than it used to be. What we need today is not another Billy Graham. If Billy Graham was alive again today, he wouldn't fill up stadiums, and he wouldn't be invited onto talk shows, and presidents wouldn't want to go visit him because the culture has changed. There's a spiritual barrier now between us and our lost neighbors. And I know there are signs of change. There are signs of hopefulness. Our friends in the UK talk about a quiet revival over there that's very exciting, where these ancient churches that used to just have a handful of gray-haired folks, now young people are coming to church church there, not in great numbers, but it's turning around. In our own country, Generation Z, these people here in the front few rows, they're more likely to go to church and learn about Jesus and be open to the gospel than their parents' generation was, which is good news. But still, and you look at guys like Jordan Peterson or Joe Rogan or the atheist Richard Dawkins, people who aren't Christians, but who will publicly say Christianity is a good thing. We need more of it. It's good for society. And yet none of those things have changed the fact that with each successive year, every poll that they take shows there are fewer and fewer people coming to Christ. So what do we do about that? There's literally no strategy. There's no $1 million campaign that's going to turn that around. That is a spiritual barrier that only the Holy Spirit of God can break through. And we need to be praying for that. Now that's out there. What about us? What about the barrier in us? This is what I call a cultural barrier. Because ironically, around the same time the ground that we were trying to plant in got hard, we started changing the way we looked at people who weren't in the church. Maybe not consciously, but it took time because we started fighting all these battles over political and social issues, and it came to the point where we started seeing our unsaved friends and neighbors not as neighbors to be won, but as enemies to be conquered. We saw our goal in the world not as a mission to spread the gospel, but as a war to reclaim our culture. We stopped seeing ourselves as citizens of heaven who were just down here for a little while as ambassadors, and instead acting like this world is our home and these other people are the unwanted invaders. And I'll illustrate it this way. If you can imagine just your average Christian family, and they've got a home next door to them that's empty, but all of a sudden one day they notice a new family is moving in. And of course, they're looking through the window shades and they're seeing what this family looks like. And maybe they notice that based on the way that they dress, that they're of a different faith. Or maybe they notice based on their bumper stickers and the sign they've already stuck out in their yard that they believe some stuff socially, politically that we don't believe. Now, how do you respond to that if you're the average Christian family? Do you respond with anger? Do you get online and say, "Don't California my Texas"? I moved here to get away from people like you. Do you respond with fear? Do you sit there and say to your spouse, "How are we going to make sure that our kids don't get influenced by them?" Do you respond with defiance and say, "Okay, we need to come up with some signs that will offend them really good, or let's find the slightest little infraction that they commit and report it to the HOA so they'll get harassed, and let's play gospel music full blast at 5 a.m. and whatever we have to do to annoy them so they'll leave"? Or do you say, "Lord, I'm amazed that you trust me enough to put me next door to some people who clearly need you. And I know that I'm not up to the task, so I'm asking you to help me and grant me wisdom, and grant me courage and humility, the ability to see them through your eyes. Just help me, oh Lord, to do my part, to bring them to you."